Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Productivity Mastery. It's probably the last episode for 2024, and you guys are gonna have the real treat today. My guest today is an exceptional person I had the chance to meet at the Web Summit conference in Lisbon, where she rocked the main stage, talking about her story, talking about her company. She grew up in the rural area in China, very poor area, from humble beginnings. Dr. Molly He is today the co-founder and CEO of Elemental Biosciences, a multidisciplinary life science company currently focused on developing disruptive DNA sequencing and other omics technology for research and diagnostic markets. Since the inception of Element in 2017, Molly and her team have raised over $680 million to fund the development, manufacturing, and commercialization of the disruptive DNA sequencer AVITI. I hope I pronounce it well.
Yes.
Molly has won numerous awards, including the prestigious Forbes 50 over 50 in 2023 and CNBC Changemaker in 2024. Many more awards under her CV. She is a prolific inventor with more than 100 patent applications and issued patents in the field of genomics and protein sciences. Molly holds a PhD from UCLA in protein biophysics. I am so humbled and honored to have you today, Molly. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Stillian. I'm really, really honored to be on your podcast, especially this is the last one. So we're hoping that we're becoming the best one, right, of the year.
There you go.
You
Wrapping up.
taught me not to be too humble.
Yes, please. Let's please. But let's start from there, Molly.
Yeah.
Um, how does a person grow up in poor area of China, ended up being the founder, the CEO of one of the most innovative companies in the US these days?
Um, it could turn into a very, very long answer, maybe more than a day of discussion, or could be a very short answer. I'm really thinking that, thinking back, I'm really a person who just follows the flow, follows the passion, never really measure risks too much. Like, let the measurements of that risks to be the roadblock of where you're going. And I don't normally think too much about, wow, this is so risky. I cannot do this and cannot do that. I normally don't think that is. I just normally say like, wow, that is really exciting. I'm just diving in and I'll figure it out later. So that's kind of my mentality.
So, what were some of the core values and principles that you maybe learned from your parents, from your upbringing, that are at the at the core pillar of your success today?
There are many things I learned from my parents. So maybe talk about my parents a little bit. Both of my parents are math teachers. So they were college educated. They're extremely smart. Um, but then during Cultural Revolution, they graduated right before Cultural Revolution, I believe. And then during Cultural Revolution, they basically were sent to a rural area in China to get re-educated because they were intellectuals. Intellectuals were not seen favorably at that time. So they were sent to rural areas to get re-educated, and I was born there. They've always taught me to work hard, right? I think, most of us can relate to that because I think most of us, if we grew up poor, we've always taught working hard. Hard working is the only way to get out of your poverty, the only way to maybe eventually find a job and make a living or better living than your parents. So I think that this is number one principle, work hard, right? And the second piece, they've always been teaching me is that you really need to get good education. Wherever you're going, find the best education you can, find the best teachers and best mentors you can, because learning is where how you grow continuously and eventually make a living. So this is really all about making a better living, right? Coming growing up very poor. Yeah.
Was that the reason you moved to the US, the love of science?
Yeah, so I do think so, and again, it's kind of sort of like follow the flow. I've always a very curious person. So when I was in college, to be honest with you, not many people know that I wasn't sure if I wanted to pursue science. I wasn't those one of the persons, who tell you that, oh, when I was 5, I wanted to be a scientist. Definitely not me. So even in college and when I was doing my biochemistry major, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to do science. But I was always a very curious person. um, During my college days, I think the U.S.-China relationship were really a lot better than today, and there was a lot of you know maybe, how do I say this, a lot of interest or exposure to the Western countries, especially in US during that time, like early 90s or late 80s and early 90s. And that was the first time we got exposed to like pop music, for example, Michael Jackson. I thought it was fascinating, and got exposed to all these fascinating technologies that we didn't really have access to in China. So I always wanted to kind of go out of the country and see what is out there in the world. Always been kind of wanting to be a world traveler. And that's actually a number one reason. Not like, hey, I'm so fascinated about like studying biology, so I'm going to go to US to study biology. That was a later development. I'm happy to talk about it. So yes, that's how I came to US, and I also thought, US will allow me to maybe, start to live a better life, right?
Right, the ticket. That's my ticket. I need to
Yeah.
sign up for the ticket. Eventually, I'll get to live in the US. Impressive, impressive. One thing we were discussing before we started recording the podcast, um, I'm fascinated personally by your personality. I came and I watched you at the main stage of the Web Summit, and I'm a speaker. I see a lot of speakers. You are one of the most confident speakers I've seen. You haven't been ever before. You haven't been in such a big stage. You shared with me
That's
that's
right.
my biggest stage. You came on the stage. You owned the stage. You were calm. You were articulate. And what fascinates me is you have this tremendous level of success already. At the same time, you're so humble. So this confidence and humbleness, like how did you manage to develop both?
That's a really great question. You're not the first one telling me that, so that really got me thinking. I think being humble is kind of really drilled down into my brain and my entire human being, because I grew up in Chinese culture, right? We've already always been taught, be modest, don't brag, be humble. I try to understand why this is the case in Chinese culture, and I couldn't come up with a way that is like coming off super positive, to be honest, because there are a lot of Chinese sayings about, if you stand out, it may be a bad thing. So you just have to blend in. The one Chinese saying called, basically, the bird who chirps the loudest or coming out of the forest or tree earliest, gosh, it will get shot first. So, so this kind of embedded in my upbringing, like, do not stand out. It may not be good for you. That really always kind of drilled in me. But then another positive side of the Chinese culture of like being humble is that there's another saying called, if you walk amongst 3 people, there's bound to be one person as your teacher. You can always learn something from that person. So that is the positive side of Chinese culture, like taught me to be humble, because everybody can teach me something. If I walk on the street, throw a stone and hit somebody, that person has something to teach me about. And it's always about learning, growing and continued learning. So I think both sides really drilled very deep in me, need to be humble. Do not think you always have all the answers, because there may be better answers out there.
Just for the audience to get the context, can you give us a bit of a view about your company today? How many people do you employ? How big is the company? What is the stage of development?
Yeah, so the company currently, I will say about 400 people. And our headquarters is San Diego, California, and we have a beautiful 5-story building that houses today roughly, I would say 300-ish, maybe 280 people. We started the company in 2017, so it's been 7 years in the making, and it feels like decade, a long, long, long time. Because, as a founder, you kind of do work 24/7. You do think about work 24/7. It's a nonstop. So the technology, as I actually talked a little bit at the Web Summit, is that I will take it back about the company, why we wanted to establish the company. This is really about improve access of technology, or precision medicine to be specific, to everybody around the world, regardless how well they're funded and their financial situations are. As you know, that precision medicine is still an ambition of the field, right? We're not quite there yet. It's not in prime time. And one of the biggest challenges is the accessibility. We have great technologies already in certain areas of the world, and some people are able to access that, but not everybody. And I also talked a little bit about that, in terms of precision medicine. What that means is that it basically means that we wanted to be able to treat a patient, depending on their genetic makeup. So it's precise to every single individual. And in order to achieve that, we really need to understand the genetic makeup of all populations, not just one set of population, and also need to understand the linkage between a genotype to a phenotype, meaning how these genetic makeup translate into certain predisposition of diseases. And that's really, really complicated. And that's one of the reasons why precision medicine is not quite there. In addition to, the tools not available to all of the people. So coming back to Element's vision, it's a grand vision that is to help to make precision medicine affordable. And our first step is to make DNA sequencing tool accessible to the entire population, entire human society, not just fixed of population. So I also mentioned the Web Summit. As of 2022, 86% of genetic information were obtained from Western European descendants. And that's very narrow, a sliver of the entire human society, right? So one of our goal is to, how do we make the technology, DNA sequencing technology, work so well, so affordable, so accessible, so we can democratizing this entire market, so the people or countries with, that are less well-funded can also have access to that same sophisticated technology. So that is our vision, step one. Make DNA sequencing accessible. But later on, we can talk about other pieces of precision medicine.
Was that the reason you started the company? You had this relation to the vision, to the purpose, to the mission of the what you're solving. Was that like, there's some business founders and there are some purpose-driven founders. So I wonder, where are you on the scale?
We are purpose-driven founders. We're very, very sure we need to have a purpose before we actually found a company. To tell you a little bit of a story, when we first started thinking about funding the company with my co-founders, initially it was more of a business-driven, the one first idea was like, well, we're all protein reagent scientists, like we make proteins, and protein can be, used in many different areas of life sciences. And it's an easier kind of business, I suppose, because you just make one thing, not an entire system, very complex system. That was very business driven. And then we thought about it, like, okay, maybe that could be an easier task. We could probably turn the company around to be profitable relatively quickly. It's a smaller effort, but what good does it do? Okay, you can actually, supply cheaper, better reagents to some other companies, but there's really not a whole lot of direct impact we want to see. We wanted to build in this company to healthcare. So very quickly, we pivoted from that idea to building a platform so we can make a bigger impact.
Did you imagine you would be where you are today with the scale, with the size of the organization, with the amount of funding? Was that part of the vision from day one?
I will say no. Well, actually, maybe my co-founders already had that vision. I cannot speak for them. But, going back to my own personality, I always just dive in, do the best at that particular moment and see where things take me to. And in retrospect, I'm not surprised at all we're here today because we have the best people, best technology. But if you ask me on day one, have I envisioned, we are here today, for example, even, raised more than $670 million or something along those lines. I would say, yeah, I would love to have that, but, I've never thought about it.
So you mentioned team, very important ingredient, and the team starts with co-founders. What is the secret of your own success being together, building stuff? Did you guys know each other from before? Is there a certain trust that you build? What would be your advice to founders trying to find the right kind of partners?
Number one thing is trust. Your founders, your co-founders, going to be with you for a long time, 24/7, for extended long period of time, and going through very excruciating pain, extended excruciating pain together. So you've got to build trust with each other. You almost feel like you can die for each other. That kind of trust that you need in your co-founders. And all the other things are secondary. Like, for example, what kind of skill sets they have. Can they, help me bring in money? And are they smart enough to build new technologies? These are secondary.
I love the phrase, how do you say it? Extensive, excruciating pain.
Pain, yes.
And I think I want to talk a little bit about that because, again, people come and watch you on this podcast, listen to the podcast. They see you on the Web Summit stage. They see all the announcements, and you're so calm and humble that it looks like this lady has it figured out. I'm sure she hasn't gone through any challenges and struggles, and it's just she's one of these people. She just knows what she has to do. But can you maybe share some of the challenges and the difficult moments, maybe early on or later, some of the biggest setbacks?
I can talk about this all day long. More than like the successful moments, probably, because I think, but the interesting thing is, every time I reflect on these difficult moments, every time I learn something new. And that really is incredible. That's why I don't really dwell too much on the successes, because they teach us something, but not as much as what the failures or setbacks are being teaching us. So every single step of the way of the company, I will say, I always feel like we're at the wrong timing, and that's incredibly painful and hard. So, for example, when we first started the technology, we got $5 million of seed funding, And we could have gotten more actually, because that was a good time. The money was abundant. But we want to be very careful about investors' money. We want to be responsible for that, because at that time, we didn't even have any proof of concept. It's really just idea on paper. And we have the trust of our early investors to build this company. So we didn't want to take more than 5 million. We thought that's enough to get us to proof of concept. And because we also know 5 million is not a lot, we need to save. So we were very thrifty, if you will. We're living on a shoestring. We found a place almost like a basement. The condition was really poor. There's really not a whole lot of infrastructure, no Wi-Fi, and it just. In retrospect, that's probably something I would not do. I would not advise new startup founders to do, because a well-set infrastructure can save you so much time. So that was like a first setback. We worked through that. Our facility got flooded multiple times, and mold growing in our media of the buffers or in our experiments and all that. So, but we had a good time. It was very interesting time. There's only like 10, 20 people there. But then we raised more money after we got proof of concept and we moved into a newer facility. We were not able to get science working. That's our first hurdle. Because initially we thought, like, we have such a brilliant group of people, we should figure it out very quickly. But we did not figure it out until, I think, May 2019. And that's almost 2 years after the company was founded. And even when I said, that day we figured it out, that's only a very early stage of like a glimpse of hope that technology may work. And later on, it took another 2 to 3 years to actually build a commercial product. So that was another hurdle we went through, because at that time, trust me, we were arguing all night long, all day long, like, oh, we should have done this, we should not have done that. That's why, coming back to the earlier point, the trust is so important. We can argue, we can fight all day long, and we can actually fight so intensely. We feel like at that moment, we don't want to talk to each other anymore. But right next day, we came back again, united towards the same mission, because we know we're on the same page. And there's a huge amount of trust amongst the founders and early employees. So this is something I think I would not give that up for anything.
Thank you for painting the picture. And simply, no, but really, like I think sometimes, especially if you haven't been an entrepreneur, it looks like this fancy, glamorous kind of cool thing that you're your own boss and you can make decisions and you go and pitch on conferences and it's just nice and you post pictures but the reality is so different. And I wonder if you can share a little bit about the reality the first 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Like, how many hours per week did you guys work? How did your working week look like, if there was an end, of course?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was an end at all. We just constantly working. It's just about like where we physically at, right? So in the office, we're physically probably at least 12 hours a day. But in the outside office, the work doesn't stop. You still keep on thinking about it. You keep on still thinking about it. And we text each other at night. It's just nonstop. But that's not the hardest part, I will say. The harder part is, how do we quickly solve problems, especially when we have disagreements? And I think that's probably very common for entrepreneurs, especially if you're not the only person running the company. You have multiple co-founders, which is much needed, because you can't build a great platform, great company by yourself most of the times. So because you have a team of founders, everybody coming in from different training, maybe thinking differently, maybe having different temper, you've got to have conflicts and disagreements, and how to resolve that quickly is very critical to build a company in the early stage. Because if you don't solve these problems quickly, you are going to go different directions, and that's the beginning point of the end. So yeah, so we had to work through that, and through that kind of early 2 and 3 years, we argue like all day long, all night long, very heated arguments. But I think the good thing about these heated arguments is actually brought us closer. And on top of that, we had much better ideas coming out of these heated debate. Instead of one person saying, I want to do this, and everybody follow and no argument. That could be easier at that moment, but may lead us to the wrong direction.
Hmm. And now, several years down the road, I'm sure you have certain ways of making the big decisions and discussing and debating them. Any reflections and strategies you can share, practices that you guys are having on a management level to make the big decisions?
I think the company has evolved so much since day one. So the decision-making process I think, has changed depending on the scale of the company. And that's a good thing, right? So I think at the beginning, because we're so small, it's very transparent. Everybody knows, even like the entry-level scientist knows what's going on, extremely transparent, because we only have like 10 people. But as you move along, naturally you build more structure, more processes. And we had to go through these kind of growing pain, because some of the earlier employees or our founding scientists will be like, oh, I don't see you anymore. I wanted to see you more. So those kind of things do happen. Those are the part of growing pain. Now the decision making is no longer kind of at the all company level, and sometimes it has to be made at director level or VP level or CEO level, all kinds of different levels decisions are being made. So yeah, it definitely increased the complexity of the process, and also increased the desire for better communications, not just horizontally, but also vertically.
I wonder, has it been a challenge for you evolving from a 3-person company to 400 people company with $680 million funding, a lot of investors, board, stakeholders? Has it been a challenge for you to evolve to this different role?
Yes, many, many challenges. If I asked you to guess, am I introverted or extroverted? I don't know if you can guess it right.
I'll probably say in the middle.
Yeah, so I think right now I'm more or less in the middle, but I think in my early career, I would say I'm very introverted. So that is my challenge, right? Because I'm very introverted. I think a lot before I speak. And sometimes I feel like I'm always one step too slow, in speaking my mind, and people jump over me and all that. So that was my biggest challenge, how to quickly express myself very clearly, and also do not be afraid to speak up. And I think this is something a lot of earlier career folks, especially scientists and engineers, that normally more introverted. I think a lot of these folks had these similar challenges, but you just have to challenge yourself. Like, hey, you've got to open up more, you've got to speak more, you've got to communicate better. So that was my biggest challenge, managing communication, and also making sure everybody's aligned and their views are balanced. That's really, really important. So that's why I'm kind of more in the middle. Maybe a couple of years down the road, I'll be extroverted.
Yeah, rocking stages, 5,000, 10,000 people doing interviews. What was the game changer for you in that perspective? Did you have a great mentor, advisor, a group of like-minded entrepreneurs that were helping you. How did you expand your communication and leadership style?
I think certain level of a coaching is good. It tells you more of a tactical side of things that how you can do better. But ultimately, it has to be inner drive. And my biggest inner drive is I'm a very responsible person. So if I'm in this seat, I know this is my responsibility, I will overcome. And I always do. So that is my biggest inner driver. Like, I really do not like to go to parties, to be openly frank, to be very frank about that. But I will go to parties because I know, hey, maybe if I open my mind, if I kind of force myself to enjoy these things, I can learn a few things. And that's kind of learning mentality. And also, hey, I can get to know people. That's part of my job. And also kind of sense of accountability, responsibility really pushed me to be a different person.
From my experience, since as I shared with you already, I grew up in Bulgaria in the
Yeah.
90s, which was the post-communistic times for Eastern Europe, and we did not really have many role models. Entrepreneurship was not a thing. Like you were not allowed to own anything, having a company before the
Yeah.
90s, right? So
Yeah.
that was the first years of democracy, the first years of for everybody, and because of 50 years of communism, people who are dreaming big, they were suppressed. Like you mentioned a little bit about
Yeah.
that, right? It's like stay down, don't think
Yeah.
you're really cool, don't
Yeah.
dream big, don't have a big vision. And yet from my experience traveling the world, meeting super successful people like yourself on the podcast, on the stages that I speak, having a big ambition, having a big vision is a prerequisite for success. And I wonder, is that something that you acquired? Is that something that you developed? You had to develop this abundance kind of mindset, or it was something that it was part of you, ingrained in you?
Hmm. Having a bigger vision.
Believing that you deserve, believing that there's big things for you and you're able to achieve them, having a great vision for yourself and your company.
That's a really great question. I never thought about that way. Is it born or acquired? A bigger vision, like maybe it's a big aspiration for myself and for the company. Can I say it's probably born?
It's okay. I can accept
Yeah,
that.
because I think maybe a mixture of a nurture and nature, maybe, but probably more nature. Because as I mentioned, to you that growing up poor and also relatively well educated, because my parents really put that as a biggest emphasis for me. I feel like making an impact to people around me has always been my kind of drive, right? So it's not always about, okay, what can I be in the future, or what can I do? Can I be a star or whatever in the future? It's never about that. It's really about how do I make things better for other people surrounding me so I can provide value to them, and in return that makes me super happy. So I like one tiny little thing. I can give you an example because my kids always say like, why do you always push your the supermarket, like the carts, into the right place? You can just leave it there. Or like, why do you kind of fold these clothes, on the shelf in the market? Because that's there's people taking care of that. I was like, well, it doesn't cost me much time or money at all, but I can leave the world in a better place than I found it. Why not? So that's always been my kind of drive. So yeah, I do want to see this company being super successful company in ways that it actually truly impacts healthcare, truly impacts society, truly impacts the human mankind, and making money and making revenue, that will naturally come if you do that first thing.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Purpose driven, believing in leading by example, and I guess this is a little bit also the Asian philosophy of um how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
Leaving no stones unturned. Just in any situation, if I can do my best and leave the world a little bit better after me, then it's going to compound, and it's just the right thing to do. But probably karma is gonna pay its job as well.
Yeah, so people always ask me, like, why do you do this, and why do you want to be your best? You can just take it easy and relax. I actually don't have an answer. It's like, when I do something, I want to put in all my efforts and make sure this is well done. I tried my best. That's always been my philosophy. I don't really know where that comes from, but that's I try to influence others around me with the same philosophy, but I don't have a like a foundational reason for that. Except, I think, when you do that, after you do that, I do feel a great sense of gratification, right? Because a great sense of pride, like, because I did something good for the world.
Do you do you usually wake up highly motivated and excited, and you can't wait to start doing stuff? Are you one of these people? You have some kind of practices to get yourself fired up?
I would say not every day. I wake up and say, "Oh, I'm so happy today." No, that's probably not every day. Sometimes, occasionally, I woke up and say, "I need more sleep. I need to go back to sleep." Right. But I do think having something that you're passionate about, uh, that you look forward to during that day, is very important. um, and those things can change. It doesn't have to be exactly the same thing. It doesn't have to be always like, hey, I love my work, I'm excited about going to work today. It doesn't have to be like that every single day, but you've got to find something that you're excited about that particular day. It can be very different things, to get up and say, wow, I'm going to do this thing today. So that thing changes for me from time to time. Of course, the work is always constant, is always there. But sometimes, it could be learning a new language on Duolingo or something. And sometimes it could be, oh, I can, go see this Broadway show with my daughter today. So it's just very different thing, but that you need that kind of spice in your life to get you excited about or positive about, what you do.
And I think listeners are probably curious to know right now, because earlier in the conversation you mentioned the word discipline, how important it is for you as a principal to be disciplined. Um, how does your week look like? And this podcast is called Productivity Mastery. So,
Yeah.
how do you plan and prioritize having these big ambitions at work, but also trying to balance with the personal, the family life?
Yeah, that is always the $64 million question. Is that how you say it? It's hard. So people ask me, how do you balance work life? And I want to be provocative. I don't think, well, for founders, entrepreneurs, okay, because this is what you signed up to do, you do not have work life balance. But what you can drive to is a work life integration. Um, so, for example, I have two girls, and they're older now. They're adults. They're both adults now. But in the early days, they have all these kind of dance shows or whatever shows they're doing. And I always kind of put those on my calendar. I say, I need to make it. And I prioritize it, this particular event over anything else. But Does that mean I have to pick them up every single day from school? Probably not, because I may not be able to do that because I have other things that equally important or sometimes more important than that to do, right? So it's really more about how you prioritize in the particular moment. You just need to choose what's more important to you um, for that particular day.
And I want to pick your brain on that. Do you have any kind of a practice like Sunday afternoon, Molly's having her cup of cocoa and she spends an hour to look at the major priorities for the week, like, how do you decide what to focus on?
Really great question. I will say this answer depends on the stage of the company you're building and also depending on the stage of your life. Um, I feel like right now I'm having a great time because I now have more time to myself. I just became an empty nester. And I think, company, I'm very happy with my staff right now in the company. I feel like I can delegate so much to them and I can trust their deliverables. So for the first time, I will say in the last 8 years, I feel like I finally have some time dedicated to me, and that is incredibly important. So I finally can go to kind of, for example, gym to work out. That actually has really positive impact on my day, right? But then, in the past 7 years, your question is how do we prioritize? Not, there's always the company. It gets through every single steps and roadblocks, just painful, as what I told you earlier. But you do find joy in that pain, especially every single step climb a step higher in your company's deliverable. That kind of excitement is totally rewarding. So you keep on climbing. But I will say to folks who just started a new company or the new founders, um, be prepared for that kind of lifestyle for a long time and have endurance for a long time, have a great step, build up great stamina for a long time because you will need it.
By the way, we have some comments here coming from the live audience. Yeva is joining us saying, when you have such in-depth experience, the knowing is there and it shows up as confidence. As Molly says, feeling passionate about life makes a difference. A very honest conversation. Thank you both. Well, thank you, Yeva, for joining us and for being with us. And we'll continue diving deep into the rabbit hole. So, Molly, um, I just wonder, you said it's different depending on the phase, but do you have, again, like there's probably so many things that you need to deal with. Do you keep like a to-do list or using some kind of an app, or like how do you make sure that everything is being taken care of?
That's a great question. I will say with confidence that luckily I'm a very organized person. And I do have all kinds of tools to keep me, um, to ensure that I do not let things slip through cracks. All kinds of different mechanism I have. I have actually old-fashioned notebook to take notes with. I also have my phone to take notes on if I don't have my notebook with me. And I put tasks on my calendar so it shows up from time to time so I can check it off. And also I do have more for work, right? So I do have like bi-weekly executive committee meeting. And every time before I go to this meeting, I will look at my notes on my phone, on my notebook, on my calendar, just to make sure all these things we close the loop on. And that's something I think it's very helpful. As a lot of times entrepreneurs are very disruptive, innovative, and less organized, but you do need a partner who can organize these things for you, making sure important things do not get slip through the cracks.
You need the molly in your eye.
But it's not a glorified task to be
No,
organized.
no,
Yeah,
but that's the thing. A lot of the things that will lead to success for an entrepreneur are doing the boring stuff, the
yeah,
admin stuff, the boring stuff,
yeah,
the problem solving. We don't want to talk about it, right?
yeah,
Uh, it's not sexy. It's not fun.
yeah, totally. So I definitely use my calendar a lot. And I put, my personal things on my Google Calendar, my company things on my company calendar. Then I have everything on my phone. So I look at my calendar a lot.
Excellent, and congratulations for finally getting to a level where you can delegate a lot, and your team understands you. They perform. They take ownership, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that. That's a big question as well. I don't know if it's 73 million question or 45, but with the level of scale and growth, how did you manage to attract so many amazing people and to retain these people as well? What were some of the maybe early failures and then lessons to the people listening?
Yeah. Um, we have, well, I personally look at two foundational things in people that who wanted to work here or who are qualified to work here. Because I strongly believe not everybody is suited for startup life. Okay. And that's just a life choice. That's totally fine. Some people more suited for big corp, and some people just more suited for startup. That's totally quite fine. That's just different personality. Um, so the two important things I'm looking for drill down to very simple words, but has a lot of sophistication behind that. One word is smart. The other word is kind. So being smart doesn't mean you have GPA of a 4 or 5 or whatever the highest GPA. Being smart meaning you have the learning growth mindset. So you always want to learn and you learn quick. And this learning agility and flexibility is super important for startup companies because every year your company goes through different kind of growth or different stage, and it will require different type of skills, different type of a mindset. So if you are fixed mindset, you will totally be outgrown very quickly, and that's make you unsuitable for these type of growth company. So that's really important. The second piece is being kind. Also has a lot of meaning to it because when you're being kind, you're more trustworthy, you're a team player, and on top of that, it's most important thing is you have high level of integrity. That's extremely important because we when we build a company, especially as mentioned to you, that's we everybody more or less goes through certain level of pain, not just executives or CEOs, even like a new scientist coming into the company, because the company growing so fast and also going against a lot of competition, you will experience pain, right? So if you do not have this high level of integrity and build the trust and kind that can work with the team, you will not be a good fit here. So these two things are extremely foundational for building company, especially in our case. And on top of that, all these other things are more tactical things. I think they're important, not as important as these two cores. The other important things, for example, is your experience, right? Because you do need a experience from various different areas, and your you know how hard you work. That's important too. The life philosophy. Um, yeah, so that's basically how we pick people. But I will say we're not always right. we make mistakes a lot in all areas of the company. The key is how do we correct our mistakes quickly and move on. So, and I'm actually really happy that we have very strong team right now. Yeah, that's it took a lot of time to build this team.
Well, congratulations once again, and maybe mm, one side you speak about is the selection criteria. These are the people
Mhm.
that you want to bring on boards. Uh, but the other side is the how do you cultivate a culture that is both productive but also kind and caring?
Yeah, we put culture very high priority in the company. So we do have like six values we value a lot, and I also believe that values are every company has their own value sets, whatever they printed on the employee handbook or they posted on the buildings. But it means different things in different companies. But I do strongly believe that the leaders have to live our values and to be leading by example. And our values, one thing I really like is be respectful, and be innovative, will disrupt the norm. That's what we say. And we lift and empower each other, and those are kind of soft skill sets. It's really, really important. So in order for us to continuously living that value, not just kind of saying it and put stickers on the wall, we actually measure performance of all elements in the company uh, by how they live the value as well, in addition to what they deliver. Right. We also have like quarterly values award. Um, yeah. So I think these kind of things
Tell me about
that
it. Tell me
important
about it.
for
Super
us.
interesting. Tell me about
Yeah.
the quarterly values award.
Yeah. Oh, more about that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
please.
So we have a quarterly all hands meeting. And my favorite part is to announce one of my favorite part, I would say, is to announce Values Award. So it's a nomination process. Anybody in the company can nominate anybody, but for values. So we have six values, and they will nominate and say this is why this person should be winning this award for this quarter. And there's a leadership team will evaluate the nominations, and we choose the most compelling one for that quarter.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
it. Literally, our first book is called Perform, The Unsexy Truth About Startup Success. Perform is an acronym, and the
yeah,
first letter P stands for purpose and values.
yeah.
The fundamental, and the more smart people and successful people like you I talk, the more I see that it's not just a nice thing to say, oh, we have company values. No, it's actually very practical.
Yeah,
These are the things we believe in. This is the compass that help us to make decisions.
yeah,
And it's not always easy, right? You say innovative and disruptive,
yeah.
but that means that the leadership needs to accept that there will be certain percentage of failures and experiments
Yes,
are that not going, like, it's not easy. It's not
yes,
easy to every time we say we value this, there's something else that might be contradicting with this value that
yes.
we need to accept. And um,
Yeah,
so
that's totally right. You're absolutely spot on. I think, even when we have these values, we tend to uh, ignore them in daily lives. And it has to be brought back to be reminded this is the value we need to live in. And obviously, as the company scales, the values may shift, and we may need to kind of rethink about what is the value now in the future. But I do think our value we set at the beginning should be supposed to be long lasting. Even when we're getting a really into a really big company, for example, disrupt the norm should always be one of the values. But that's hard because especially when we grow bigger and bigger, you start to get stagnate, and it's harder to innovate. We have more processing structures now. So as you said, it's always going to have conflicting forces to go against that, but really up to the leaders and the companies to continue to push our values.
Final question on values. What did it take for you guys to craft the values, to clarify them? Was that a process? How did that happen?
Yeah, it was a process. So at that time, we had probably less than 100 people or even fewer, like maybe 50, 60 folks. I believe a lot of our company elements participated in that. And obviously, there was a top down, there's also bottom up. And we had a few discussions and we narrowed it down to like 6. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I wanna give you a imaginative situation. Imagine I'm a wizard. I have a magic wand, and I just do the abracadabra, and I all of a sudden you have 5 extra hours in your week. What are you gonna do with these 5 extra hours
Hmm. That's a really great question. Just the 1 week or every week I have 5
every week?
hours?
Every week you have five
That's
extra hours.
amazing. That's amazing. That I really want that to happen. So I think my answer may vary slightly depending when you ask me. I think as of now, I really hope at least more than half of these hours, 3 hours, I can dedicate to get to know elements more. I feel like that when the company grow bigger and bigger, I see people working on the floor less and less, and I don't like that kind of feeling because I like to be more connected to everybody. So I will definitely dedicate like 3 hours to do that, and I would use 1 hour to really think through, because I feel like a lot of times I don't have time to sit down, clear my mind, and think through, are we still staying on this vision? How do we continue to define, clarify our vision? And what are the process to get there? Can we redefine, can we clarify that process to get to that vision? That's very important. And then another hour, I want to save it for myself. Yeah.
Is it okay if I invite you over the next 10 days, over the holidays, to try and reflect a little bit and see, maybe not 5 hours, but whether you can win yourself 2 extra hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it comes down to just slowing down a little bit and doing a little bit of time accounting. Where
Yeah.
is my time going right now, and where is there 1 hour, 2 hours that I can potentially delegate something, stop doing something that's probably low priority. Like, just my invitation to
Yes.
everybody listening. By the way, everybody listening, now is the holiday time. It's time for reflections. I'm talking to myself. I'm not just talking to Molly.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because I think that's a really great question, because everybody can make their hours truly count every day, right? Because I feel like the least thing I like is to do busy work. And this is something I try to communicate with everybody, even within the company or even with my daughters. If you think you're just doing busy work, not getting much value out, that means you need to do something else. So that's a great question, great suggestion, and I will take you up on that.
okay, and I will send you a message 2 weeks from now
Yeah.
to see how things go. Molly, since the time is going fast, I would like to ask you actually to give us a bit about the vision. If now is what, like, we're,
Mhm.
we're getting into 2025, this December 20 2024. I want you to imagine 5 years in the future, boldest vision, everything goes by plan. What is the vision? Where is Element Biosciences? Imagine it's 2029, December 2029.
Okay. So very simple goal. 5 years later, when I step onto Web Summit stage, if they invite me, I would like to see everybody actually have heard of Element's name.
How
Because
many of you have heard Element, and the whole
yeah,
room is
like
starting
whole
to?
room's like, yes. But that's joking, halfly joking aside. I do think that Element is going to make much bigger impact in precision medicine in the next 5 years in many different ways. And first, we're already doing it. We're already democratizing sequencing. We're bringing sequencing, a DNA sequencing into the areas that's, less well funded, right? Because that's really important. And the second piece is we're pushing the multi-omic piece, meaning, DNA is just one piece of puzzle to understand biology. So we wanted to be able to bring the same kind of tool, democratized tool, to everybody on the other side of molecules to understand biology. That's proteins, for example. That's, how the cell works together, how they interact with each other. To truly understand dynamics of biology, that will help us to improve precision medicine down the road. So these are the things that we're thinking the next 5 years, and we could even go beyond that into more of a use cases and applications. Yeah, very exciting 5 years
I
ahead
love
of
it.
us.
I love it. And I love it's so purpose driven. And maybe just kind of a final question to wrap up this episode. How can we support you, the audience? Um, I don't know, maybe you now are looking for some scientists to join, you're looking for, or you want to go and do more speaking engagements. Like, what is on your mind, and how can we, the guys behind the podcast and the audience, how can we support you on the journey?
Root for the underdogs who has a very high mission to improve healthcare.
I just wanted to let it land. Thank you so much, Molly. This was beautiful. This was beautiful. Thank you for making the time in your very, very busy schedule. And I want to say to everybody who joined us and listened to the whole episode, this is episode 204, meaning there's 203 more episodes than this one. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you enjoyed this episode, send it to one person that can get inspired, that really help us as well to grow the podcast and to get the chance to invite incredible people like Molly to the podcast. Molly, once again, thank you so much for your insights, for making the time, and have happy holidays.
Yeah, thank you, Stylian, for having me, and happy holidays to you and to everybody in the audience.
Ciao.
Okay, bye.